The car lurched to a stop so fast I thought I'd failed the turn. My hands froze on the wheel, heart pounding like I'd just run a red light. Then I saw Marcus, my instructor, staring out the windshield, his jaw tight, like he'd seen something I hadn't. It was a Tuesday afternoon in Beaverton, Oregon, the kind of day where the sky was too blue to feel real, and the air smelled like pine and promise. I, Ethan Caldwell, 24, was 3 weeks into my driving lessons. A late bloomer behind the wheel thanks to a childhood spent dodging foster homes and bus schedules. Marcus Rivera, early 30s, was the guy tasked with teaching me how to parallel park without sweating through my shirt. He was all sharp edges, former Marine, clipped voice, eyes that didn't miss a thing. But there was this warmth in him, like a fire you only notice when you get close. "Ethan, pull over," Marcus said, his voice low, almost a whisper. I glanced at him, confused. We were on a quiet street, no traffic, no reason to stop. My foot hesitated on the brake, but I eased the car to the curb, the engine humming softly. He didn't look at me, just unbuckled his seatbelt and stepped out. I sat there, gripping the wheel, wondering if I'd screwed up some rule I hadn't learned yet. Marcus paced a few steps, then leaned against the car, his hands stuffed in his pockets. The sun caught the faint scar above his eyebrow, a jagged line I'd never dared ask about. "Get out," he said, not sharp, but urgent. I fumbled with my seatbelt, my sneakers hitting the pavement as I joined him. The street was empty, just us, the car, and a breeze that carried the scent of freshly cut grass. "You're not a bad driver," he started, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "But you're holding back, like you're afraid of the road." I opened my mouth to protest, but he held up a hand. "Not just the road, Ethan. Life. You're white-knuckling it, and I can't teach you how to drive until you let go." I blinked, caught off guard. This wasn't about missed signals or sloppy lane changes. Marcus was looking at me like he could see the parts one kept hidden. The years in foster care, the nights I'd spent wondering if I'd ever belong anywhere. I laughed, nervous, trying to deflect. "What, you moonlight as a therapist now?" He didn't smile. Instead, he stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the cedar in his cologne. "I know what it's like," he said, his voice softer now, "to feel like you're stuck in neutral, like you're not allowed to want what you want." His eyes flicked to mine, and for a second, I forgot how to breathe. I'd noticed Marcus from day one. Not just his looks, though God, the man could have been carved from stone, but the way he carried himself, like he'd fought for every inch of who he was. I'd caught myself staring too long at his hands when he adjusted the rearview mirror, or the way his laugh lines deepened when I cracked a dumb joke. But I'd buried those thoughts. Guys like me didn't get to have crushes on guys like Marcus. Not in my world. "What are you saying?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. My heart was racing now, faster than when I'd nearly sideswiped a mailbox last week. He hesitated, like he was standing on the edge of something. Then he reached out, his hand brushing mine, just for a second, but it was enough to send a jolt through me. "I'm saying," he said, "that I see you, Ethan. And I'm not supposed to, but I do." The world tilted. I wanted to laugh it off, to say he was reading too much into my bad driving, but the way he looked at me, like I was more than a student, more than a kid who'd been kicked around by life, made it impossible to lie. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "You're my instructor," I said, the words sounding weaker than I meant them to. "Yeah," he said, his voice rough. "And I'm crossing a line, but I'm tired of pretending I don't feel it." He stepped back, running a hand through his hair, and I could see the war in his eyes. Duty versus something else, something real. I didn't know what to say. I'd spent so long building walls, keeping people out, that the idea of someone seeing me, really seeing me, felt like a trap. But Marcus wasn't backing down. He wasn't running. And for the first time in years, I didn't want to run either. The next lesson was scheduled for Thursday, but I couldn't stop thinking about Marcus. His words kept replaying in my head, like a song I couldn't shake. I see you, Ethan. What did that even mean? Was he just being kind? Or was there something more? I'd never been good at reading people. Too many years spent guarding myself from disappointment, but the way his hand had brushed mine felt like a promise. Thursday came and I was a mess. I showed up at the driving school's lot, my palms sweaty, my stomach in knots. Marcus was waiting by the car, same as always, but there was something different in his posture, a tension I hadn't noticed before. "Ready?" he asked, tossing me the keys. His voice was steady, but his eyes lingered on me a second too long. We drove in silence for the first 10 minutes, the only sound the hum of the engine and the occasional click of the turn signal. I kept my eyes on the road, hyper-focused, like I could will away the heat creeping up my neck. Finally, Marcus spoke. "You're doing better today. Looser." I risked a glance at him. "Yeah, well, I'm trying not to crash your car." He chuckled, low and warm. "You're not gonna crash. You've got this." He paused, then added, "You've got more than you think." There it was again, that intensity, like he was talking about something bigger than driving. I wanted to ask him what he meant, to push past the awkwardness and figure out what was happening between us, but fear clamped my mouth shut. What if I was wrong? What if I'd misread everything? We pulled into a quiet neighborhood, the kind with tidy lawns and kids' bikes scattered on driveways. Marcus pointed to a spot by the curb. "Parallel park here," he said. I nodded, focusing hard, guiding the car into the space with only a minor wobble. When I cut the engine, he turned to me, his expression unreadable. "Good," he said. "Really good." But he didn't move to start the next drill. Instead, he leaned back in his seat, his hands resting on his knees. "Ethan, I owe you an apology." "For what?" I asked, my heart kicking up again. "For Tuesday. I shouldn't have said what I did. It was unprofessional." His voice was steady, but there was a crack in it, like he was forcing the words out. I stared at him, my chest tight. "You don't have to apologize," I said. I didn't mind." His eyes snapped to mine, searching. "You didn't." I shook my head, my mouth dry. "No. I mean, I felt it too." The air in the car felt too small, too heavy. Marcus exhaled, like he'd been holding his breath for days. "This is complicated," he said, almost to himself. "I could lose my job. You're my student." "I know," I said, my voice barely audible. "But I don't care." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something shift in his expression. Something raw and unguarded. "Ethan," he said, his voice low, "you have no idea how hard it's been to keep this professional." Before I could respond, he leaned across the console, his hand finding mine. This time, he didn't pull away. His touch was warm, steady, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had to hide. The moment Marcus's hand stayed on mine, the world outside the car seemed to vanish. The quiet street, the hum of the engine cooling, the distant bark of a dog. It all faded, leaving just us, suspended in a bubble of possibility. I wanted to say something, anything, but my throat felt tight, like I was afraid speaking would break whatever this was. Marcus pulled his hand back slowly, like he was reluctant to let go. "We can't do this here," he said, his voice rough but not unkind. He glanced out the window, scanning the empty street, as if expecting someone to catch us. "Not like this." I nodded, though my chest ached with the weight of what he wasn't saying. "So what do we do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I wasn't used to this, being wanted, being seen. My life had been a series of closed doors, and now one was cracking open, but I didn't know how to walk through it. He ran a hand over his face, exhaling sharply. I don't know, Ethan. I just know I can't keep pretending I don't feel something. He paused, his eyes meeting mine again, and there was a vulnerability there I hadn't seen before. But you're my student, and I've got baggage. Stuff you don't know about. Then tell me, I said, surprising myself with the edge in my voice. I'm not a kid, Marcus. I've got baggage too. He studied me for a long moment, like he was weighing whether to let me in. Finally, he nodded almost imperceptibly. Not here, he said. Let's finish the lesson. Meet me after at the coffee shop on Cedar Street. We'll talk. The rest of the lesson was a blur. I drove back to the school's lot, my hand steadier on the wheel but my mind racing. Marcus kept his instructions short, professional, but every time our eyes met in the rearview mirror, I felt that spark again, like a current running between us. When I parked, he gave me a small nod. 7 o'clock, he said, then got out and walked away without looking back. Cedar Street Coffee was one of those places that felt like it belonged in a movie. Dim lights, mismatched chairs, the smell of roasted beans and cinnamon lingering in the air. I got there early, my nerves buzzing like I'd downed 3 espressos. I picked a corner table, far from the counter, and fiddled with a sugar packet while I waited. Marcus showed up right on time. His usual polo swapped for a fitted black sweater that made him look less like my instructor and more like someone I could imagine knowing outside of a car. He slid into the seat across from me, his expression guarded but soft. You came, he said, like he hadn't been sure I would. You thought I wouldn't? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. He smiled, just a flicker. I didn't know what to expect. He ordered a black coffee, no sugar, and I got a latte I barely touched. For a moment, we just sat there, the hum of the coffee shop filling the silence. So, I said finally, what's your baggage? He laughed, a low, warm sound that made my chest ache. Straight to the point, huh? He leaned back, his fingers tapping the edge of his mug. All right, I was in the Marines for 8 years. Saw things, did things I'm not proud of. When I got out, I thought I could leave it all behind, but it doesn't work like that. I've got scars. Some you can see, some you can't. I thought of the scar above his eyebrow, the one I'd noticed that first day. And, I prompted, sensing there was more. And, he said, his voice dropping, I spent a long time hiding who I am. Growing up in a small town, being in the military, it wasn't exactly a safe place to be out. I got good at keeping people at arm's length. Until you. My breath caught. Me? He nodded, his eyes steady on mine. You're different, Ethan. You've got this fire in you, even if you don't see it. The way you keep going, no matter what life's thrown at you. It's hard not to notice. I looked down at my latte, my face warm. I don't feel like that, I admitted. Most days, I'm just trying to keep my head above water. Then you're stronger than you think, he said. And the way he said it, like it was a fact, not a compliment, made me believe him for a second. What about you? He asked. Your baggage. Lay it out. I hesitated. I'd spent so long keeping my story locked away, it felt like peeling back skin to share it. But Marcus was watching me, waiting, and I realized I wanted him to know. Foster care, I said finally. Bounced around since I was 6. Never had a real family, just a series of houses and rules. Got out at 18, been on my own since. I learned early not to trust people, because they always leave. His expression softened, but there was no pity in it, just understanding. That's a lot to carry, he said. But you're still here. That's not nothing. We talked for hours, the coffee shop emptying around us. He told me about his life after the Marines, how he'd moved to Oregon to start over, how teaching driving lessons was supposed to be temporary but became a way to connect with people. I told him about the foster homes, the good ones and the bad ones, and how I'd always dreamed of a life where I could just be myself, no apologies. By the time we left, The night air was cool, and the stars were sharp against the sky. We walked to his car, parked a block away, and when we stopped, he turned to me. "I don't know where this is going," he said, his voice low, "but I want to find out. If you do." My heart was pounding, but I nodded. "I do." He reached for my hand again, and this time I didn't let go. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Driving lessons became our secret space, a place where we could steal moments between gear shifts and traffic rules. Marcus was careful, always professional when other students or instructors were around. But when it was just us, he'd let his guard down, his smiles warmer, his touches lingering. But it wasn't all easy. I started noticing things. The way Marcus tensed when his boss, a gruff guy named Carl, lingered too long at the school. The way he'd check his phone and frown, like he was waiting for bad news. I didn't push, but I could tell something was eating at him. One afternoon during a lesson, he got a call. He glanced at the screen, his face hardening, and ignored it. But when it rang again, he swore under his breath and pulled over. "Give me a sec," he said, stepping out. I watched him pace a few feet away, his voice low but sharp, arguing with someone on the other end. When he got back in, he was quiet, his hands tight on the clipboard. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. He shook his head. "Not really. That was my ex. He's not great at letting go." "Ex?" I asked, my stomach twisting. Marcus hadn't mentioned anyone else. "Yeah," he said, his voice heavy. "Long story. Not a good one." I wanted to ask more, but the look on his face told me to drop it. We finished the lesson in silence, and when I left, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming, something that could pull us apart before we'd even started. The air between Marcus and me had shifted, like a storm brewing just out of sight. Driving lessons still happened, but they felt heavier now, weighted with unspoken questions. I wanted to know about his ex, about the shadows in his eyes, but every time I got close to asking, fear stopped me cold. What if the truth was more than I could handle? It was late September, and Beaverton was starting to feel like fall, crisp air, leaves crunching underfoot, the kind of weather that made you want to hold someone close. I was getting better at driving, smoother with the clutch, less likely to stall at stop signs. Marcus noticed, giving me small nods of approval, but his smiles were rarer now, his attention split between me and whatever was haunting him. One evening, after a lesson, we ended up at a diner on the edge of town, a place called Rosie's with neon signs and sticky booths. I'd started to think of these moments, coffee shops, diners, quiet walks, as ours, stolen from the world that didn't know about us yet. We ordered burgers and fries, and for a while it felt normal, like we were just two guys sharing a meal. But then his phone buzzed again, and his face darkened. "Same guy?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. Marcus sighed, setting his fork down. "Yeah, his name's Derek. We were together for 2 years, back when I was still in California. It ended badly." "How badly?" I asked, my heart thudding. He leaned back, his eyes distant. "He wasn't stable, controlling, manipulative. I got out, moved here, thought I'd left him behind. But he's been calling, texting, says he wants to talk. But it's never just talking with him." I swallowed, my fries suddenly tasteless. "Does he know where you are?" Marcus hesitated, and that pause told me everything. "He might," he admitted. "I've been careful, but he's persistent. Always has been." I wanted to say something brave, something to make him feel safe, but all I could manage was, "You don't have to deal with him alone." He looked at me, his expression softening. "You're sweet, Ethan, but this isn't your fight." "It could be," I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "I mean, I care about you." His eyes held mine, and for a moment, I thought he might reach across the table. Instead, he smiled, small and sad. I care about you too. That's why I'm trying to keep you out of this. I didn't know what to say to that. The idea of Marcus facing something or someone alone made my chest ache, but I didn't know how to push without crossing a line. So we finished our meal, the conversation lighter but strained, and when we parted ways, his hand lingered on my shoulder a second longer than usual. The next week, things got worse. I showed up for my lesson to find Marcus distracted, his usual focus gone. He snapped at me for a sloppy turn, then apologized immediately, rubbing his temples like he hadn't slept. "Rough day," he muttered, but I could tell it was more than that. Halfway through the lesson, we stopped at a gas station to refuel. While Marcus pumped gas, I checked my phone, scrolling through notifications. That's when I saw it. A message from an unknown number, sent to the driving school's public contact form but addressed to me. "Stay away from him, Ethan. You don't know what you're getting into." My stomach dropped. I glanced at Marcus, who was wiping his hands on a rag, oblivious. I didn't show him the message, didn't know how to bring it up without sounding paranoid. But when we got back in the car, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching us. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the message, wondering if it was Derek, wondering what he knew about me. I'd spent my life keeping my head down, avoiding trouble, but now it felt like trouble was chasing me. And Marcus. The next morning, I texted Marcus, asking if we could meet outside of lessons. He agreed, suggesting a park near his apartment, a place with walking trails and a small pond. "You okay?" I asked, sitting beside him. He shook his head. "Derek's in town. I saw him yesterday, outside the school. He didn't approach me, just watched. Like he's waiting for something." My blood ran cold. "Did you call the police?" "And say what?" Marcus said, his voice sharp. "He hasn't done anything yet. They won't care until he does." I reached for his hand, squeezing it. "You can't just wait for him to do something, Marcus. What if he's dangerous?" He looked at me, his eyes tired but fierce. "I've dealt with worse than Derek. But I'm not letting him near you." The protectiveness in his voice made my heart ache. But it also scared me. I wasn't used to people standing up for me, and I didn't want Marcus to get hurt because of it. "We'll figure it out together," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. He squeezed my hand back, and for a moment, we just sat there, the world quiet except for the rustle of leaves and the distant quack of ducks. I wanted to freeze that moment, to hold onto the warmth of his hand, the way he looked at me like I was worth protecting. But I knew we couldn't stay there forever. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called one of my old foster siblings, Jada, who was now a social worker in Portland. She'd always been the one person I could trust, the one who'd never judged me for who I was. I told her everything about Marcus, about Derek, about the message. She listened, her voice calm but firm. "Ethan, you need to be careful," she said. "But you also need to trust your gut. If this guy Marcus is worth it, don't let fear stop you. Just keep your eyes open." Her words stuck with me, a reminder that I wasn't alone anymore. But they also made me realize how much I was risking. Marcus wasn't just my instructor anymore. He was someone I could see a future with, and that scared me as much as Derek did. The next lesson, I showed Marcus the message. His face went pale, then hard, like he was slipping back into his Marine mindset. "I'm handling it," he said, his voice clipped. "You don't need to worry." But I was worried, and I was tired of being the one who waited for things to happen. "No," I said, surprising myself with the force in my voice. "We're handling it. Together." Marcus looked at me, his expression unreadable. Then slowly he nodded. "Okay," he said. "Together. Together." The word felt like a lifeline, but it also meant stepping into a fight I wasn't sure I was ready for. Marcus and I spent the next few days trying to act normal. Driving lessons, coffee runs, stolen glances. But the shadow of Derek loomed over everything. I kept checking my phone for more messages, jumping at every unfamiliar car that lingered too long near the driving school. Marcus, for his part, was quieter, his usual warmth tempered by a vigilance that made my heart ache. We started taking precautions. Marcus changed the lesson routes, avoiding the quiet streets where Derek might be waiting. He gave me his personal number, told me to call if anything felt off. I wanted to believe we could outrun this, that we could carve out a space for ourselves despite the threat. But the fear was always there, like static in the background. One afternoon, while practicing three-point turns in an empty lot, Marcus broke the silence. "I'm thinking about quitting the school," he said, his voice casual but heavy. "Starting over somewhere else." I nearly stalled the car. "What? Why?" He shrugged, but his eyes were distant. "This job was never permanent. And with Derek, maybe it's better if I disappear for a while." My hands tightened on the wheel. "You're running," I said, the words sharper than I meant. "You can't just leave." He looked at me, surprised, then softened. "I'm not running from you, Ethan. I'm trying to keep you safe." "Safe?" I snapped, pulling the car to a stop. "You think leaving me here, wondering if you're okay, is keeping me safe? I've lost enough people, Marcus. I'm not losing you too." The air in the car felt thick, charged. Marcus leaned back, his jaw tight, but his eyes were soft, searching. "You're not losing me," he said quietly. I don't know how to do this without putting you in the middle of my mess." "Then let me in," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm already in, Marcus. I've been in since you pulled over that day and told me you saw me." He didn't say anything for a long moment, just looked at me like he was memorizing my face. Then he reached over, his hand resting on mine, and the warmth of his touch grounded me. "Okay," he said finally. "No running. We deal with this together." That night, Marcus invited me to his apartment for the first time. It was a small place, just outside Beaverton, with a view of the hills and a cluttered bookshelf that made me smile. Dog-eared novels mixed with military history and car manuals. We ordered pizza, sat on his couch, and for a few hours it felt like we could be normal. Just two guys, laughing over bad TV, sharing stories about nothing and everything. But then his phone buzzed, and the mood shifted. He checked it, his face hardening, and showed me the screen. Another message from Derek. "You can't hide forever. I know where you live." My stomach twisted. "He's been here?" I asked, my voice shaking. Marcus nodded, his expression grim. "I saw a car circling the block last night. Same one he used to drive." "We need to do something," I said, standing up, pacing. "File a restraining order. Tell the police something." Marcus shook his head. "A restraining order won't stop him. He's not the type to care about rules." "Then what?" I asked, frustration bubbling over. "We just wait for him to show up?" Marcus stood, crossing to me, his hands on my shoulders. "We stay smart," he said. "We don't give him an opening. And we don't let him take this," he gestured between us, "away from us." I wanted to believe him, but the fear was like a weight in my chest. Still, I nodded, leaning into his touch. "Okay," I said, "but you don't get to decide what's best for me. We make decisions together." He smiled, small but real. "Deal." The next day, I called Jada again. She'd been checking in on me, her social worker instincts on high alert. I told her about Derek's messages, about Marcus's plan to run. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "You need to document everything, every message, every sighting. And you need to talk to someone at the driving school. They need to know what's going on." I didn't want to drag anyone else into this, but Jada was right. The next morning, before my lesson, I went to the school's office and asked to speak to Carl, Marcus's boss. He was a big guy, all gruff voice and no nonsense, but he listened as I explained the situation, carefully, leaving out the part about Marcus and me. "Sounds like trouble," Carl said, leaning back in his chair. "Rivera's a good guy, but he's got a past. You sure you want to get mixed up in this?" "I'm sure," I said, my voice steady. "He's worth it." Carl raised an eyebrow but didn't push. "All right, I'll keep an eye out. You see anything weird, you tell me." I thanked him and left, feeling a little lighter. But when I got to the car, Marcus was waiting, his face pale. "Derek was here," he said, his voice low. "He left a note on my windshield." He handed me a crumpled piece of paper. In sharp, angry handwriting, it read, "You don't get to move on." My blood ran cold, but I forced myself to stay calm. "We're not letting him win," I said, crumpling the note in my fist. "We're stronger than this." Marcus looked at me, his eyes fierce but tired. "You're stronger than you know, Ethan. That night we made a plan. We'd document everything, like Jada said. We'd talk to the police, even if they couldn't do much yet. And we'd keep living, driving lessons, coffee dates, moments that were ours. Derek could try to scare us, but we wouldn't let him take what we'd found." But as we sat in Marcus's apartment, the lights low, his hand in mine, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Derek wasn't just a ghost from Marcus's past. He was a threat, and he was closer than we thought. The days that followed felt like walking on a tightrope. Marcus and I were careful, checking our surroundings, sticking to crowded places, documenting every message and sighting. We went to the police, who took our statements but warned us they couldn't act without concrete evidence of a threat. It was frustrating, but it made us lean on each other more, our bond growing stronger with every shared glance, every quiet moment where we didn't have to pretend. I passed my driving test a week later, a small victory that felt huge. Marcus was there, watching from the sidelines, his smile brighter than I'd seen in weeks. "You did it," he said, pulling me into a quick hug when no one was looking. "Knew you could." It should have been a perfect moment, but as we walked back to his car, I saw it. A familiar sedan parked across the street, the driver's face obscured. My heart sank. "Marcus," I whispered, nodding toward the car. He followed my gaze, his body tensing. "Stay here," he said, starting toward it, but I grabbed his arm. "No," I said. "Together, remember?" He hesitated, then nodded. We approached the car, my pulse racing, but before we got close, the engine roared to life, and it sped off, tires screeching. Marcus swore under his breath, his hands clenched into fists. "That was him," he said, his voice low. "He's getting bolder." That night, we went to Jada's place in Portland. She'd offered her spare room, a safe space while we figured out our next move. Her apartment was warm, cluttered with plants and books, and she greeted us with a fierce hug. "You two look like you need a drink," she said, pouring us glasses of wine. Over dinner, we laid out everything, Derek's messages, the note, the car. Jada listened, her face serious. "You need to confront this head-on," she said. "Not with fists, but with proof. Get him on record doing something he can't deny." Marcus nodded, but I could see the weight on him. "I thought I could outrun him," he admitted. "But he's not letting go." "You don't have to run anymore," I said, reaching for his hand under the table. "You've got me. And Jada." She smiled, raising her glass. "Damn right. Nobody messes with my family." The next morning, we got a call from Carl. A security camera at the driving school had caught footage of Derek tampering with Marcus's car, slashing a tire, leaving another note. It wasn't much, but it was enough for the police to issue a warrant. They picked Derek up that afternoon, and though he was released on bail, the restraining order was finally in place. It wasn't over, not completely. Derek could still be out there, waiting for another chance. But as Marcus and I sat on Jada's balcony that night, watching the city lights, I felt a shift. We'd faced the worst of it together, and we were still here. "You changed everything, you know," Marcus said, his voice soft. "I was stuck, just going through the motions. Then you showed up, all stubborn and brave, and I don't know. You made me want more." I smiled, my heart full. "You made me want more too. For the first time, I feel like I could belong somewhere." He leaned over, kissing me gently, and in that moment, the world felt right. We weren't just surviving anymore, we were building something worth fighting for. Months later, Marcus left the driving school, but not to run. He started his own business, teaching defensive driving to teens, using his past to help others. I moved in with him, our small apartment filled with laughter and the smell of coffee. Derek faded into the background, a shadow we'd faced and overcome. We still drive together sometimes, just for the hell of it, winding through Oregon's backroads with the windows down. Every mile feels like a promise, a reminder that we found each other, that we chose each other, and that no matter what the road throws at us, we'll keep going, together,